I see glimpses of truth thou hast for me.
I'm Nicole Richon-Schoel. I was on the staff at Wellspring through the 80s and 90s. And as Chuck mentioned, being there and knowing Nancy and Rosemary and so many of you profoundly impacted my life and continues to do so. Before I begin reading, I just have to do one thing. I just want to throw a quick kiss to Nancy and to all of our friends in Hepton Ridge. Every spring, we ironed the tablecloths or white sheets if we didn't have enough and got out our very best dishes. Early on, when our budget was tight, we actually had a community meeting to decide whether we could afford to buy a nice tablecloth and napkins for our Seder table. We decided yes, we could and should. Rosemary rolled dough into thin sheets and baked matzo balls with no yeast or leavening to remember how quickly the Jewish people had to flee their homes with no time for their daily bread to rise. We dipped watercress as a symbol of the bitterness of slavery into bowls of salt water representing tears. When evening came, we blessed the candles and wine and took turns around the table reading the prayers. The youngest present asked the ancient question, why is this night different from all other nights? At the end, like the Jews around the table throughout millennia, we called out, next year in Jerusalem. For our Wellspring guests, we added, next year in my own home. Passover usually fell at the same week as Easter, a Christian celebration with roots in ancient pagan festivals of new life, emerging from the darkness of winter. We loved celebrating both holidays of spring and fertility. On Easter morning, the children at Wellspring took little baskets to hunt for eggs in the gardens and bushes, as the women in Jerusalem went looking for a dead Jesus and met a living one. Paul, who loved chocolate so much, always went with the kids on the hunt. The night before, we started a fire with some dry twigs in an old galvanized steel wash tub out in the yard and lit our big Pascal candle. From there, we passed the flame to smaller candles that we each held and carried the light into the darkened house. Most of our women guests came to this ritual. We had prepared the house by taking away all the old candles, putting out fresh linens, and filling each room with flowers. Then we brought the Pascal light to the new candles in each room and then finally to the chapel. There, we blessed a bowl of water and then blessed one another, and both read and sang the story of the power of life breaking through death. One Easter, everyone at Wellspring experienced that power in a way that we will never forget. Some years earlier, a young woman, Linda, had come to the shelter with her little boy. She had had a hard life, struggling with addiction, which she did finally overcome. She was able to move to a new house and a new job, but shortly before moving into her own place, just in her 30s, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and it had metastasized. As the disease progressed, her son was placed in foster care. Linda was admitted to Gloucester's Addison Gilbert Hospital and was about to be moved into hospice care on the same campus. The hospital social worker just happened to be Kathy McIntyre, who was Wellspring's very first board member. I don't want to go there to die, Linda told Kathy. What do you want? Asked Kathy. I want to go home. I want to go back to Wellspring House. Do you think that's possible? Kathy picked up the phone and called Nancy, who replied, "It is absolutely possible." It was Easter weekend. We brought a hospital bed into the ground floor room we called the study. On Saturday morning, an ambulance brought Linda and a nurse to Wellspring. We weren't prepared for someone to die. We were preparing to be with her. Our Easter celebrations continued in other rooms in the yard, but in that quiet room, filled with candles and gentle music, people came and went just to sit with Linda. Then it was Easter morning. Outside could be heard the joyful noises of children, along with Paul, hunting for eggs. One of them was Linda's son, whose foster parents had brought him over to spend the day. What was most on Linda's mind was her son's future. We arranged for our friend, attorney Rick Porter, to bring Linda's papers that allowed his foster parents, whom she knew loved him, to adopt. Once she signed those papers, she drifted in and out of sleep, only rousing when her child came to sit with her on the bed and hug her and run off to play with the other children. Elsewhere in the house, Easter dinner was celebrated, but it did not once disturb the peace and beauty of the room where Linda lay. Toward evening, her boy came and kissed her one last time, and she died. That was an extraordinary space and time to experience the closeness of life and death. Her memorial service was at Wellspring, and her young son welcomed and thanked people for coming. Linda finally got what she wanted and what she needed. She was home. She was accepted, and she was loved, and she knew her little boy would be cared for.
Glimpses of truth thou hast for me.